the boy destined to conquer the world. More than 2,000 years ago, in the rugged mountains of ancient Macedon, a child was born whose destiny would shake the foundations of the known world. His name was Alexander. From his earliest years, there were whispers that he was no ordinary boy. His mother, Olympias, believed he was descended from Zeus himself, while his father, King Philip II, forged Macedon into a fearsome military power. Yet it was Alexander's own burning ambition that marked him for greatness. As a child, Alexander performed an act that became legend. He tamed the wild horse Bucephalus, not through force, but through insight, realizing the animal feared its own shadow. By turning the horse toward the sun, Alexander mastered what others could not. This moment symbolized the man he would become, a leader who conquered fear with intelligence rather than brute strength. Educated by Aristotle, the greatest philosopher of the age, Alexander absorbed lessons in warfare, politics, science, and poetry. He studied the heroes of Homer and kept the Iliad close to his heart, believing himself a new Achilles destined for eternal glory. For Alexander, knowledge and conquest were inseparable. At the age of 20, his world changed forever. King Philip was assassinated, and Alexander inherited the throne. Many believed the young king would fall, crushed by rebellion and surrounded by enemies. Instead, Alexander moved with ruthless speed, securing Greece and silencing all opposition. Then he looked east, toward the vast Persian Empire, the greatest superpower the ancient world had ever known. This was not simply the beginning of a war. It was the opening chapter of a 10-year epic that would stretch from Europe to Asia and reshape history forever. If you want to follow the rise of a man who dared to conquer the world itself, like this video, subscribe to the channel, and stay with us for the next chapter of Alexander's incredible journey. Crossing into the realm of kings. In the spring of 334 BC, Alexander made a decision that would change history forever. With an army of roughly 40,000 men, he crossed the narrow waters of the Hellespont, stepping from Europe into Asia. Before any battle was fought, Alexander performed a symbolic act. He cast his spear into the soil of Asia and declared the land won by the spear. This was not arrogance, it was a declaration of intent. Alexander had not come to raid Persia. He had come to take it. The Persian Empire, vast and wealthy, ruled over millions and stretched from Anatolia to the far reaches of Central Asia. Its king, Darius III, commanded immense resources and powerful satraps. Many believed Alexander's invasion was reckless, even suicidal. But Alexander understood something his enemies did not: speed, discipline, and leadership could overcome numbers. The first great test came at the river Granicus. Persian forces waited on the far bank, confident that the river itself would break the Macedonian advance. Against the advice of his generals, Alexander led the charge personally, plunging into the river under a storm of arrows. The fighting was brutal and chaotic. Alexander was nearly killed when a Persian noble struck at his head, but his companions saved him at the last moment. The victory at Granicus sent shockwaves through Asia Minor. Persian commanders were defeated, and Greek mercenaries fighting for Persia were crushed. City after city opened its gates to Alexander, not merely out of fear, but admiration. He presented himself not as a destroyer, but as a liberator, freeing Greek cities from Persian rule and respecting local customs. This victory proved a crucial truth: the Persian Empire was not invincible. Alexander's legend began to grow, not only among his own soldiers, but among his enemies as well. The young king had crossed into Asia as a challenger. After Granicus, he was recognized as a conqueror. Yet greater trials lay ahead. Darius himself was now preparing to face this rising storm from the west. The clash at Issus. As Alexander pushed deeper into Asia Minor, the Persian king Darius III finally moved to confront him. Unlike earlier satraps, Darius commanded the full might of the Persian Empire, an army vast beyond counting, drawn from every corner of his dominions. In late 333 BC, the two forces met near the narrow coastal plain of Issus, a place where geography would decide the fate of empires. Though massively outnumbered, Alexander recognized opportunity in the terrain. The mountains and sea restricted Persian movement, preventing Darius from using his numerical advantage. Alexander positioned his elite companion cavalry on the right and personally led the charge. His strategy was bold and decisive: strike directly at Darius himself. The battle erupted in chaos. Macedonian phalanxes pushed forward with long sarissas, while cavalry clashed in clouds of dust and steel. Alexander drove straight toward the Persian center, cutting through elite guards. As the fighting intensified, Darius, seeing Alexander advancing toward him, lost his nerve. The great king of Persia turned and fled the battlefield. The moment Darius fled, the battle was lost. Persian lines collapsed as panic spread through the army. Thousands were cut down as they tried to escape. Alexander had achieved something extraordinary: he had defeated the Persian king in open battle. Even more astonishing was what followed. Darius's family, his mother, wife, and children, were captured by the Macedonians. Instead of humiliation or cruelty, Alexander treated them with honor and respect, reinforcing his image not merely as a conqueror, but as a king of kings. The victory at Issus transformed the war. Alexander was no longer fighting Persian generals, he was challenging the authority of the Persian throne itself. Darius would offer peace, wealth, and territory in exchange for an end to the conflict, but Alexander now believed the entire empire was his by right. The road to total conquest lay open, and Alexander would not turn back. Siege, fire, and a king in Egypt. After the victory at Issus, Alexander faced a critical choice. Rather than chase the fleeing Darius into the heart of Persia, he turned south along the eastern Mediterranean coast. His goal was clear: destroy Persia's naval bases and secure control of the sea. One city in particular stood in his path: Tyre, a powerful island fortress believed to be impregnable. The siege of Tyre became one of Alexander's greatest tests. The city stood offshore, protected by towering walls and the sea itself. For 7 months, Alexander refused to retreat. He ordered the construction of a massive causeway, stretching from the mainland to the island, while Persian and Tyrian forces bombarded his men from the walls. Casualties mounted, morale wavered, yet Alexander pressed on with relentless determination. When Tyre finally fell in 332 BC, the result was devastating. The city was destroyed, and its fall sent a brutal message across the region: resistance was futile. From that moment, most coastal cities surrendered without a fight. Alexander then marched into Egypt, where he was welcomed not as an invader, but as a liberator from Persian rule. The Egyptians crowned him pharaoh and hailed him as a divine ruler. At the edge of the Nile Delta, Alexander founded a new city, Alexandria ***. Destined to become one of the greatest centers of learning and culture in the ancient world. Seeking divine confirmation of his destiny, Alexander journeyed deep into the desert to the oracle of Ammonius at Siwa. What the priests told him remains a mystery, but when Alexander emerged, he was changed. He now believed without doubt that he was chosen by the gods themselves. By the time he left Egypt, Alexander was no longer merely a Macedonian king. He had become a figure of myth. Half man, half legend, marching steadily toward the heart of the Persian Empire. Gaugamela, the fall of an empire. In 331 BC, Alexander and Darius faced each other one final time. The Persian king chose the plains of Gaugamela, a wide and open battlefield prepared specifically to crush the Macedonian army. Darius assembled an enormous force, hundreds of thousands of troops, war elephants, and scythed chariots designed to tear through enemy lines. He was determined that this time, Alexander would be destroyed. Alexander studied the field carefully. Knowing he was outnumbered, he refused a direct clash. Instead, he advanced his army at an angle, drawing the Persians out of position. As Persian chariots charged, Macedonian troops opened their ranks, allowing the chariots to pass before striking them down. Discipline and training defeated raw numbers. At the decisive moment, Alexander spotted a gap in the Persian center. Leading the companion cavalry, he launched a lightning strike straight toward Darius. Once again, the young king aimed not at the army, but at its heart. As Alexander drew closer, panic seized Darius. For the second time, the great king fled the battlefield. With Darius's retreat, the Persian army collapsed into chaos. Gaugamela was not merely a victory, it was the destruction of Persian power. Soon after, Babylon, Susa, and Persepolis opened their gates to Alexander. He walked through the palaces of ancient kings and claimed treasures beyond imagination. When Persepolis was burned, whether by accident or intention, it symbolized the end of the old world order. The Achaemenid Empire, ruler of Asia for over 2 centuries, was finished. After Gaugamela, Alexander was no longer just a conqueror. He was the master of Asia, the most powerful man the ancient world had ever seen. The pursuit of a fallen king. After the crushing victory at Gaugamela, Alexander stood as the undisputed master of the Persian heartland. Yet one task remained unfinished. Darius III still lived, and as long as the great king survived, Alexander's claim to the empire was incomplete. Determined to end the struggle, Alexander set off in relentless pursuit, driving his army eastward into the vast and hostile regions of Media and beyond. The chase was brutal. Persian loyalists, fearing Alexander's advance, abandoned Darius and turned against him. As Alexander closed in, Darius was betrayed by his own satrap, Bessus, who hoped to seize power for himself. When Alexander finally reached Darius, he found the once mighty king dying, stabbed and left to perish in a desert cart. Alexander responded in a way that surprised both allies and enemies. He covered Darius's body with his own cloak and ordered a royal funeral, honoring him as a king. By doing so, Alexander presented himself not as Darius's destroyer, but as his rightful successor. From that moment, Alexander adopted Persian royal customs, wearing elements of Persian dress and incorporating Persian nobles into his administration. This decision caused tension within his own ranks. Many Macedonians believed Alexander was abandoning his roots, becoming too Persian in his ways. Yet Alexander understood that to rule Asia, he must become a ruler of Asia. Not merely a foreign conqueror. With Darius dead, resistance did not end. Instead, it transformed into guerrilla warfare across the eastern provinces. Alexander now faced a new challenge, not defeating empires in open battle, but subduing lands that refused to bow. The conquest was far from over. Into the eastern frontier, Bactria and Sogdiana. With Persia under his control, Alexander pushed further east, marching into the wild and mountainous regions of Bactria and Sogdiana, lands that modern maps place in Afghanistan and Central Asia. Here, the terrain was as challenging as the resistance itself. Steep mountains, narrow passes, and harsh winters tested the limits of even the Macedonian army. The local leaders were cunning and relentless. Guerrilla tactics, ambushes, and fortified strongholds made Alexander's advance slow and bloody. Yet the young king was unyielding. He led by example, crossing rivers, scaling cliffs, and sleeping alongside his troops. His courage inspired loyalty, turning exhaustion into determination. One of the most legendary events of this campaign was the capture of the Sogdian Rock, a fortress perched atop a sheer cliff. Soldiers believed it impossible to conquer. Alexander, however, scaled the cliffs under cover of night, surprising the defenders and seizing the stronghold. This victory was more than military, it was psychological. It proved that no fortress, no mountain, no obstacle could halt Alexander's ambition. During these campaigns, Alexander also faced internal challenges. His troops, weary from years of continuous warfare, began to question the limits of his ambition. Some feared he aimed for godhood, while others simply longed to return home. Alexander quelled dissent with a mix of rewards, inspiration, and at times, stern discipline. He reminded them that they were not just soldiers, they were shaping history. By the end of these campaigns, Alexander had solidified control over the eastern provinces. Yet beyond the mountains lay a new world, India, and a king unlike any he had faced before, Porus. The Battle of the Hydaspes. In 326 BC, Alexander's army reached the banks of the Hydaspes River, in what is now modern-day Punjab, Pakistan. Here, he faced King Porus, a warrior of immense skill and valor, commanding war elephants and a disciplined army. The battle would test everything Alexander had learned, the limits of strategy, courage, and leadership. Porus's elephants created a living wall, trampling anything in their path and striking fear into Macedonian soldiers. Yet Alexander remained calm. Using clever tactics, he feigned a crossing at one point, then secretly led his forces across upstream to flank the enemy. As Macedonian phalanxes advanced and cavalry struck with precision, chaos erupted in Porus's ranks. Despite the terrifying elephants, Alexander's soldiers fought with unwavering discipline. At a decisive moment, Alexander personally led a charge against Porus's central forces, cutting through the lines and facing the Indian king directly. The battle was fierce and bloody, yet Alexander's superior tactics and leadership ultimately prevailed. Porus was captured but treated with honor, allowed to retain his kingdom as a loyal ally. The victory at the Hydaspes was not just a military triumph, it was a demonstration of Alexander's ability to integrate cultures. He admired bravery, regardless of origin, and sought to incorporate conquered peoples into his empire. This approach secured loyalty and stabilized newly conquered lands. By now, Alexander's campaigns had stretched from Greece to the edge of the Indian subcontinent. His men were exhausted, yet the vision of reaching the ends of the world kept them moving forward. The dream of a unified empire, blending East and West, seemed closer than ever. Rebellion, reflection, and the march home. After the grueling victory at the Hydaspes, Alexander's army faced new challenges, not from enemies, but from exhaustion and morale. His soldiers, after years of continuous campaigning, longed to return home. They had crossed deserts, mountains, and rivers, faced countless battles, and endured extremes of heat, cold, and hunger. Many begged Alexander to turn back, fearful of what lay further east. Despite the weariness of his men, Alexander continued to push forward, exploring the unknown territories of the Indian subcontinent. Rivers, jungles, and unfamiliar tribes tested his endurance and leadership. Along the way, he founded cities, imposed administration, and integrated local cultures into his vision of a new empire. His approach was not merely conquest, it was transformation. Eventually, the army reached the Hydaspes River, the furthest point of their advance. Here, for the first time, Alexander faced opposition not from armies, but from his own men. They refused to march further, exhausted and fearful of unknown lands. Alexander, ever pragmatic, recognized their limits and agreed to turn back. This moment marked a turning point. Alexander's ambition had no bounds, yet he learned that even a king must consider the endurance and loyalty of his followers. The march home became a journey of consolidation, as he moved through Persia, Bactria, and Sogdiana, securing alliances, punishing revolts, and strengthening the foundations of his empire. By the time Alexander returned westward, he was no longer just a warrior. He was a ruler, a visionary, and a man who had reshaped the known world in a single generation. His legend had been carved in blood, strategy, and sheer determination.
Legacy of a conqueror, the Hellenistic Age. Alexander the Great returned from his eastern campaigns as a man who had changed the course of history. His empire stretched from Greece to Egypt, Persia, and the far reaches of India, a vast territory unlike any before him. Cities he founded, like Alexandria in Egypt, became centers of learning, culture, and trade, blending Greek and local traditions. His vision of a unified world inspired generations, even after his untimely death in 323 BC at the age of 32. Yet Alexander's greatest legacy was not merely the lands he conquered, but the ideas he spread. Greek culture, language, and science merged with Persian, Egyptian, and Indian traditions, giving birth to the Hellenistic Age, an era of philosophy, art, mathematics, and exploration. His approach to leadership, respecting local customs, rewarding loyalty, and inspiring courage, set a standard for rulers to come. Alexander's life reminds us that ambition, vision, and courage can reshape the world. He faced insurmountable odds, crossed continents, and battled armies far larger than his own, yet he never lost sight of his purpose. His story is a testament to human potential when guided by intellect, strategy, and unwavering determination. If you've been inspired by Alexander's incredible journey, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and click the bell icon to follow the full story of history's greatest conquerors. Join us as we continue to explore the epic tales that shaped our world.